The jurors, your name.
Stephanie Sailors.
What was your name back in 2019?
Stephanie Johnson.
Have you since gotten married?
Yes.
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Do you know someone by the name of Christine Melton?
Yes, Christine and I have been friends since we were in high school.
Where did the two of you meet?
In Illinois, where we grew up.
When did you meet?
When we were about 15 years old, and we became friends through her cousins, who I'm also very close with, and we were inseparable, moved across the country together, lived together all through our 20s, and then ended up moving to Florida to be close to all of our family down here.
Where else did you live across the country with Christine?
We lived in Colorado together as well.
Did you both end up here in Cape Coral, Florida?
Yes.
Back in October of 2019, were you working?
Yes, Christine and I both worked at Duffy's in Cape Coral.
What type of employer is Duffy's?
It was a restaurant and bar, and we both waited tables there.
Was Christine dating anyone back in October of 2019?
No, Christine was not dating anybody.
Were you dating anyone?
No, I was not.
Where did Christine live at the time?
Christine lived in Cape Coral off of Tudor Drive.
What type of home did she live in?
It was a duplex apartment.
Did she live with anyone?
She lived alone.
Did she have any pets?
She did have one cat.
Your Honor, may I approach?
May.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits 4 and 10A. I'm going to show you these photos and ask if you'll take a look and tell me if you recognize them. Starting with State's Exhibit 4, what do you recognize this exhibit to be?
That's Christine?
Okay. Is that how she looked back on October 6th and 7th of 2019?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 10A. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, that is the apartment that Christine lived in.
And does that fairly and accurately show the apartment that she lived in back in October of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would move 4 and 10A into evidence.
Any objection? Be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Is that Christine?
Yes.
I'm showing you her duplex where she lived at the time. Which door is hers?
The white door on the left. So there's a window and then the door right next to it, to the right.
Okay, so the door to the right of the window is her door, or the door to the left of the window?
To the left of the window.
Of the middle window?
Yeah, the far left door.
Thank you. I want to take you back to October 6th of 2019. Did you see Christine on that day?
Yes, Christine and I had planned to meet up later that night and to go out drinking at the Buddha bar in Fort Myers.
Had you ever been to the Buddha bar?
I had not been there before.
Where is the Buddha located?
It's located off of McGregor and I think College Parkway.
Is that in Lee County, Florida?
Yes.
How did the two of you get to the Buddha?
So I met Christine at her apartment that night, and we took an Uber from her apartment to the Buddha.
About what time did you Uber over to the Buddha?
Around 10:30.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes. Yes.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 7. I'm showing you State's Exhibit 7. Will you take a look at it and tell me if you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, this is the Buddha in Fort Myers.
And is the bar behind the big statue of the Buddha?
Yes, that's the main entrance to the bar.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 7 into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Do you have any specific reason the two of you chose the Buddha on that night?
There was live music there that night, so we wanted to go see a band play.
When you got there, what was just sort of the general environment of the bar?
It wasn't overly crowded. There was, a decent amount of people there that night, dancing, drinking, nothing out of the ordinary from a typical bar.
Was there a band playing?
Yes.
Now, were you friendly and did you talk to other people that were there?
Yeah, we socialized quite a bit. There's a couple of different bars in the main bar, and we were down at one bar, we danced, we got drinks at other bars, we talked to the people that were there. Pretty standard going out night.
Now, obviously you're drinking and listening to music this entire time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had been drinking pretty heavily that night.
And is that why you chose to get an Uber?
Yes, yeah, we both knew we were going to be drinking, so we didn't want to be driving at all.
Now, while you were there, did someone approach you?
Yeah, towards the end of the night, as we were walking up to the upstairs bar, somebody jumped out in front of me, kind of just like to get my attention, and said, "Hey, who's your friend?" And gestured towards Christine. He seemed friendly and introduced himself, and I grabbed Christine and said, "Hey, this guy wants to meet you."
What was his demeanor?
Friendly, charming.
Is there any red flags that popped up when you were talking to him?
No.
How did he introduce himself to you?
At that point, he introduced himself as JR.
Do you see JR sitting in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you please point to him and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
Right there, in a bright blue suit.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Okay.
Now, has his appearance changed since the time that you met him?
Yes, he has a lot more tattoos on his face. He did not have any facial tattoos
May
the
I
night
approach
we
a
met
witness?
him.
You may.
At this time, the state showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 39. Would you take a look at State's Exhibit number 39 and tell me if you recognize that exhibit?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
JR, the person who introduced himself to us that night.
And is he the same person sitting here in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
And does this fairly and accurately represent how he looked back on October 6th of 2019?
Exactly.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 39 into evidence.
No objection.
It'll be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Now, after you introduced him to Christine, what happened next?
Christine and I and JR and another man, Jason, who we were introduced to by JR, talked at the bar, mingled. Christine and JR seemed to be interested in each other. Me and Christine had commented on how he had dimples, and one of the guys she had been talking to earlier in the night only had one dimple, and he had two dimples. And, she definitely was attracted to him, and he seemed attracted to her, and they were friendly and getting to know each other.
Now, you mentioned that JR introduced you to someone by the name of Jason.
Yes, so there was another man that he was with at the bar named Jason, and I was under the impression that they were there together as friends, just like me and Christine had been.
At some point, did you take your talking and socializing outside of the bar?
Yeah, so that was at the end of the night and the bar was closing. So they were kind of shuffling everybody out the door. Christine and I went outside and we're still continuing to socialize with JR and Jason until, it was decided to leave. And me and Christine had came in an Uber, so we followed Jason and JR to their car. JR had tossed the keys over to Jason and we were going to go after party. I didn't know at that point if we were going back to Christine's house or where we were headed from there, but we were going together.
Now, when you went into the parking lot, everybody's talking, again, describe the mood.
Happy, everybody was cheerful, intoxicated, but, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary or scary by any means, just typical end of the bar night.
Now, is this around 2 a.m. that the bar's closing and
Yes.
kicking everybody out?
So
Now,
everything was closing at that point.
again, as far as JR's concerned, does he exhibit any kind of anger or any kind of red flags?
No, not at all.
And in fact, you and Christine thought he was charming? Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that JR threw the keys over to Jason.
Mm-hmm.
What type of car was it that you got in?
It was a Dodge Hellcat, I think it's called.
Whose car did you believe that was?
I believed it was Jason's at that point.
When you got
Or,
it,
yeah.
you believed it was Jason's car?
I don't really remember. I just know Jason was driving at that time, so my assumption was that it was his car.
Where did everybody sit in the car?
Jason sat in the front seat, Christine sat in the in the passenger seat, and then me and JR were in the back seat.
Now, where did you end up going?
We drove not very far. It was only a couple of turns, maybe less than 10 minutes in the car, but we ended up at Jason's house.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel what has been previously marked as case exhibits number 8 and 9. I'm showing you states exhibits number 8 and 9. Will you please take a look at those exhibits and tell me if you recognize them?
This is the car that we left the Buddha in.
States exhibit number 8.
8.
Does that fairly and accurately represent the way the car appeared when you got in it that night?
Yes.
Showing you states exhibit number 9. What does states exhibit number 9 show?
This is Jason's house.
Is this the house where you went to after the bar closed?
Yes, I remember that star on the house.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will move 8 and 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
Permission to publish?
You may.
You just told the jurors this is the Hellcat that you all got in?
Yes, ma'am.
And then states exhibit number 9, that's Jason's house.
Yes.
When you arrived at Jason's home, was anyone else present?
Yeah, his mom was home. So when we walked in the front door, his mom was awake and on the couch and not very happy that he was bringing people home. We tried to make small talk and, kind of ease the situation, but we just ended up going to Jason's bedroom, which was down the hall from there.
Now, when you got back into Jason's bedroom, what happened with Christine and JR?
So pretty quickly after getting to Jason's house, Christine and JR started having sex.
And when they started having sex, what did you and Jason do?
Jason had a bedroom that led to the outside, so Jason and I hung out outside most of the time, only to, really go in to use the bathroom maybe. Christine and JR were inside for a while. They came outside and mingled a little bit with us and went back into the bedroom.
You mentioned that they started out having sex. Did their sexual encounters appear to be consensual?
Yes.
So there was nothing that, again, at this point, that caused any red flags?
No.
Now, when you and Jason were outside, what were the two of you doing?
We were drinking, smoking, talking. He had a trampoline out there, so we sat on the trampoline and talked for a while. Just mingling, talking.
Did the two of you have any interest in each other that night beyond just talking and friendship?
No,
So did the two of you hook up at all?
no.
Now, you mentioned that JR and Christine would go inside the house and come back out and kind of go back and forth. During these back and forth interactions, were they normal types of interactions?
Yeah.
Did they appear to be having a good time?
Yeah, they appeared to be having a good time with each other and, joyful and, nothing out of the ordinary or concerning.
Now, about how long were you at Jason's house?
I would say we were probably there for a couple hours, maybe 2 hours.
After about 2 hours, did you all leave?
Yes, so we were at Jason's house and then kind of, quickly JR was saying, oh, we got to go. This guy doesn't want us here anymore. And it was kind of at that point that I realized that Jason and JR didn't know each other before this night. The way JR was, seeming at the beginning of the night was that, they were there together. And then when we were leaving, it was, it didn't seem that way. It seemed like this guy wanted us out of his house and it was kind of quickly an exit. But when we went to the driveway, we got back into the car that we came in, which Jason had drove at that time, but now JR was driving.
Okay, so when you are leaving Jason's house, was it somewhat abrupt as far as
Yeah,
you
it
all
was
leaving?
quick, but it wasn't anything like, he wasn't mad that we were still there or anything like that. It was just time to go.
And this night that you went out on the bar, it was a Sunday night,
Yes.
so you're going into now Monday morning.
No, Monday, everybody, I had to work. I believe Jason had to work the next day. His mom obviously wasn't happy that we were there to begin with, so.
So the party, everything is kind of winding down for the night.
Yes, and we go and get in the car, and JR is trying to back the car out of the driveway, and he can't get it to go in reverse. It's just revving the engine in the driveway.
Is the car a manual or a stick shift?
It's a stick shift
Is
car.
it clear to you that he was unable to drive a stick shift?
Yes.
So what happened is you're in the driveway and he's revving the engine.
So Jason actually had come outside because he heard the engine revving, and said, you guys got to leave. You can't be here anymore. You're being too loud. It's, almost the morning. At that point, JR had actually gotten the car into reverse and into the street. He was trying to get the car into drive and go forward, and same thing, he couldn't get the car to move. He's just revving the engine in the middle of the street. It was at that point that I got out of the car and said to Christine, I said, get out of the car, let's take an Uber. Let's get in an Uber and go home.
Okay. So were you able to make contact with an Uber driver to have them come pick you up?
Yes, Christine called the Uber.
Now, once the Uber driver arrived, did you get into the Uber right away?
Yes, I got into the Uber right away. Christine and Wade Wilson were looking for his cell phone. He couldn't find his cell phone. So they started to walk back towards Jason's house to look for his cell phone. I don't know if they made contact with him. I was sitting in the Uber at that point with the Uber driver, and both him and I remember him saying, oh, they got 5 minutes or I'm leaving. And, both of us were ready to go at that point.
Now, to your knowledge, did Wade Wilson, or the person that was saying that he was JR, did he ever find his phone that night?
I don't believe so.
So when he and Christine got back in the car, where did the Uber driver take you?
The Uber took us back to Christine's apartment.
And then that's 10A, Christine's apartment.
Yes.
Now, What happened when you got back to Christine's home?
When we got back to Christine's home, the three of us went into her house, and I know Christine and I had this sense of relief that we had made it home, you know, that we got home, you know, safely, and, you know, just it was winding down. I remember sitting on the couch and taking my shoes off. I remember Christine standing in the kitchen getting something to drink. And I remember telling her, you know, I had to go home because I had to go to work the next day and take my son to school.
Now, where was your son staying that night?
He was with my mom.
And did you and your son live with your mom?
Yeah, we lived with her at the time.
Now, about what time did you leave to go home so that you could take your son to school and go to work?
About 6 o'clock.
Now, prior to leaving, did everything seem fine?
Yeah, it did. And I remember telling Christine, you know, I have to go home, I have to go to work. And she was like, okay. She hugged me and kissed me goodbye and said, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
And again, when she told you goodbye and that she'd see you tomorrow, did you have any concerns for her safety?
No,
And in fact, if you did, would you have left her home with just her and Wade Wilson in that house?
not at all. And if she was concerned, Christine would have never let me leave that house if she was scared. She would have said, let's get this guy out of here together.
So when you left, is it safe to say that really the night was over, the party was over?
Yeah.
It's already morning time.
And, you know, like I said, we had this sense of relief that we had made it home. You know, we obviously were in a car with somebody who couldn't drive a car. And I know for me, that was the scariest part of that night, was the being behind the wheel of a car with somebody who couldn't drive. And I know when we got back to Christine's house in that Uber, it felt like, you know, we were home safe.
And it seems that your concern was not driving while intoxicated because along the way you had gotten Ubers.
Yeah.
Now, when you left, you said that you had to take your son to school, and you also had to go to work. What time did you go to work?
I had to work the morning shift at Duffy's that day. I think I was at work by 10:30 in the morning. My son starts school at 9, so I dropped him off and then went to work.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Christine worked at Duffy's. Did she have to work a shift that day?
She was not scheduled to work that day.
Nevertheless, did you reach out to her just to check in with her at some point?
Yeah, I had texted her in the early afternoon and just said, you up? And I did not receive a response.
All right. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing State's Exhibit, or I'm showing defense counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6, 5I, and 5J. I ask you to take a look at State's Exhibit 6. Do you recognize the numbers on State's Exhibit 6?
Yeah, that's Christine's phone number.
Is that the phone number you texted her?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you State's Exhibit 5I. What is 5I?
Christine's cell phone.
Okay, and 5J?
The back of Christine's cell phone.
And is that a pop-it that's on the back of her cell phone?
Yep.
That would
the
help
pop
her to hold
socket.
it?
Yep.
And is this the phone that she carried that night and carried with her at all times?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move 6, 5I, and 5J into evidence.
Any objection? Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Showing State's Exhibit 6. That was Christine's cell phone number at the time.
Yes.
Is 630 like a Chicago or an Illinois area code?
Yeah, that's an Illinois area code.
Showing you 5I. That's the front of her cell phone.
Yes.
And then 5J, that's the back of her cell phone with the pop socket.
Yes.
Now, when she didn't immediately respond to your text, were you concerned at all?
No, at that point, I was not concerned. We had had a late night. She didn't have to work. I assumed she was sleeping.
Okay. Did you later on try to get a hold of her?
So when I left work, I called her again. She didn't answer. And then I got in touch with Samantha, who is her cousin. Again, not concerned that I hadn't heard from her. I asked Sam, I said, have you talked to Christine at all today? She said no. I had told her, I was out with her last night, just kind of told her about our night and what we did, and ended the conversation. Maybe a few minutes later, I'm not sure how long, I got a call from the Cape Coral Police Department.
Now, you mentioned you talked to Samantha, who was Christine's cousin. Mm-hmm. Was Samantha also a good friend of yours?
Yeah, Samantha and I have been friends since high school as well.
And was Samantha obviously she was the cousin of Christine, but were they also very close
Yeah,
friends?
all of us have been like sisters, like best friends.
And Samantha had not gone out with you the night before?
No, Samantha was not with us.
Now, did you also try to call Christine?
Yeah, I tried to call Christine and text her that day.
When you called her, did the phone ring numerous times?
Yes.
It didn't go straight to voicemail?
I honestly, I remember it ringing and going to voicemail. I don't remember how, if it went straight to voicemail or, rang for a long time.
But either way,
I know
she
I
never-
did not talk to anybody and nobody answered.
No one
She did.
answered.
No.
Now, you mentioned that a Cape Coral detective called you. And what was the purpose of that detective's call to you that you thought at the time?
So at that time when they called, they were asking me if,
Your Honor,
Sustained.
may I give a?
Yes.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted, but for the effect on the listener.
Still hearsay and still.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you back to the jury room for a few minutes.
All rise.
The jury is exited the courtroom. You can be seated.
Judge, I think it would be helpful if I just proffered a couple questions so that I could make my argument as to
Okay.
how this is not going to be hearsay.
All right.
All right, so you received a call from a detective, and what was the basis or what was that conversation?
the police were asking me if I knew where Christine was or why her car would have been found in Fort Myers.
So based on these questions, what did it cause you to do?
It caused me to start being concerned about what happened to Christine after I left.
Okay, and then so based on your concern about what happened, what did you do?
Myself, Samantha, our other best friend, and Samantha's husband all went to Christine's apartment.
And when you got to Christine's apartment, what did you see there?
When we got there, the caution tape was already up.
So, Your Honor, the reason for asking the detective is not to prove that her car was stolen, but to prove that at that point, based on our conversation, the action she took and the steps she took, which were to talk to her cousin Samantha, to then actually go over to that home. So based on that, the state would argue that's an exception to the hearsay rule and it should be admissible.
My objection is it's hearsay, and the relevance, there's no relevance. I mean, she can just say, based on what the officers told me, I went over to the house without relaying what the officers told me.
Judge, if you're saying what the officers told me, that's again, it's still an exception to hearsay. What the officer told her is not used for the truth of the matter asserted. So therefore, it is non-hearsay because the exception is the information that he told her was used by her to then go to the house and to further try to find out where her friend Christine was. So what the officer told her, we're not using that for the truth. So therefore, it's not hearsay.
But the other objection was to relevance of the effect on her.
Sure. The relevance is that at this point, she realizes that she should be concerned that her friend is missing and that she goes over there. So it's highly relevant as to how this day took place and how she gets over to her missing friend's home and what she does. That's all completely relevant to this case and to the charges that we have before this court.
All right.
Well,
Go ahead.
sorry, while it may be interesting, it's not relevant to anything in this case.
Okay. All right, I'm going to sustain the objection. You can ask her about getting a call from the detective. I think you could go as far as having an objection to her asking, the detective is asking questions about Miss Melton.
Correct.
And then, what did you do next?
Okay? If it's just based on what the detective said, ask you, what did you do?
All right, so I'll ask her, did the detective call you, and based on what he told you, did you become concerned and then go to Christine's home?
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Let's bring the jury back in. Yes?
The gentleman's chair that I pulled out, I noticed he had two books, and I asked him when he went back, I said, what's that other book? He said, it's my personal. And I said, I have to bring that to the attention of the judge. He said he didn't write anything in it, but
Okay. So, I guess one.
It's an official notebook as long as that
As
notebook's
long as it
getting turned
stays
in.
here, he can't take it back. He can't take it back to the jury room with him.
okay.
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. And I can even just instruct them that I prefer they use the notepads that the court provided. And if they, anything else, leave it out of the courtroom and just use the notepads in the courtroom and leave those in the
For
courtroom.
now, it stays in the courtroom. Or
Yeah, he said he hasn't written anything in it.
May I hand it to you?
You have it?
Yes, right there.
No, just leave it. It's fine. Where is it? In his chair? Okay. No, I don't. What we'll do is. All right. Yeah. Let me take a look. Okay. It's blank. There's nothing in it. So
And
that's his personal one. There's nothing in here. Doesn't appear to be anything written in it. It's just got his juror summons. So just ask him to leave this back in the jury room and only use the note and pad that the court has provided.
Bring it back with me now.
Yes.
Just so the record's clear, the
Wait.
bailiff handed the notebook that the juror brought with him to court. The court has reviewed it. There's no writing on the inside. You've given it back to the bailiff.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then you can bring everybody else out. And I'll instruct all the jurors if they brought their own personal notebooks or anything, just to leave those back in the jury room and only use the ones provided by the court.
Please, thank you.
Jurors entering.
All right. Please be seated. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know some of you may have brought your own notepads or what have you with you. I would just ask you, leave any of those personal things in the jury room, and when you're in the courtroom, just use the notepads that the court has provided. That way they can stay in here during any proceedings, okay? Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All
Thank you. Going back to, I believe we were talking about a detective making contact with you. Once you had a conversation with the detective, did you become concerned?
Yes.
What did you do?
When I received the call from the Cape Coral detective, myself, Samantha, and her husband and her other cousin all went to Christine's apartment.
What did you see when you arrived at Christine's apartment?
When we got there, the police were already there, and they had already put caution tape up around her house.
Did you know any information at that point about where Christine was?
No, we went from Christine's house to her mom's house, which was right around the corner from Christine's apartment. And we waited there until the detective came there and informed us that they found.
Sustain.
At some point, did you learn that Christine had passed?
Yes,
And what happened once you learned that Christine had passed?
it was devastating.
Did you stay at her mother's home?
No, I went straight from her mother's home to the Cape Coral Police Department and gave a statement.
Now, when you went to Christine's home and you found yellow crime scene tape around her property, did you see her car sitting in the driveway?
No, and in fact, it was pouring rain, and I remember all the detectives and police officers standing under her carport and seeing that her car was not there.
Now, when you and Christine had gone out to the Buddha bar the night before, was her car in that carport?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel 5D.
I'm sorry, what?
D.
D.
as in David. I'm approaching you and showing you State's Exhibit 5D. Do you recognize what's in that exhibit?
Yes, those are Christine's name tags from her Duffy's uniform.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move 5D into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
You were just talking about Christine's car not being in the carport when you went to her home, showing you Exhibit 5. Was that Christine's car at the time of her death?
Yes.
Also showing you 5A. Is that
Yes.
the back of her car?
Yes.
And it's a Versa.
Yes, a Nissan Versa.
I'm showing you 5D. Are those name tags that she would wear to work when she waited tables at Duffy's?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned giving a statement to law enforcement. Did you detail everything to them about the night before and the events that took place at the Buddha all the way until you were contacted about her death?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, did Christine have any tattoos on her leg?
Yeah, she had a tattoo on her calf of a Gemini symbol with some tribal music notes on the side of it.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing States Exhibits 10E and 13.
Ten E and
13. May I approach?
you may.
I'm going to ask that you take a look first at 10E. Do you recognize this?
Yes, that's
And what does it
Christine.
show?
That's the tattoo on Christine's leg.
And then I'm also going to have you look quickly at 13. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that's Christine.
And is that after she had passed?
Yes.
And a permission, first of all, the state would move 10E and 13 into evidence.
They'll be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Judge, I would ask that 13 be passed around to the jurors rather than display that one.
Okay.
Then I'm showing 10E is that the tattoo on her calf.
Yes.
When you went and gave your statement to Cape Coral, did they show you 6 different photographs of a suspect in this case?
Yes.
May I approach?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing the Defense Counsel what's been marked as State Composite Exhibit 41. Approaching you and showing you State's Exhibit 41. If you would just take a look at this exhibit and tell me if you recognize it.
Yeah, that's my signature there. And these are the photos that they showed me, the lineup photos.
Now, did a detective show you the series of photographs?
Yes, he showed me all those photographs.
And there's a series of 6 photographs, is that correct?
Yes.
And did the detective in any way give you any idea of who you should pick or who you should identify?
No.
Did you have a fair amount of time to be able to look and see if you could ID anybody?
Yes.
And did you in fact ID someone?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how were you able to tell who you ID'd?
By my signature.
And then did you also
And then
put
the date, yes.
And 10/7/19, that's the day that you learned that Christine was no longer with us?
Yes.
And did you identify photo number 4 as a person that had introduced himself to you as JR?
Yes.
At this time, the state would move 41 into evidence.
Any objection?
Objection, can we approach?
Yes.
number 4.
Okay.
Who is picture number 4?
JR,
And you see JR sitting here in court today.
yes, he's sitting
Please
right
wait.
over there.
Okay, so the person sitting right over there is in a sort of a royal blue
He is wearing
jacket.
a royal blue jacket and a yellow tie.
And is that person the person that you knew as JR?
Yes,
And is that the same person that's in photograph number 4?
yes, that is the same person in photograph number 4, JR.
And at this time, the state would move 41 into evidence.
No objection.
Be admitted.
I have a moment.
Ma'am.
At this time, the state has no further questions and tenders a witness.
All right. You may. Is that, you've got the disc and everything else? It's
Ms. Johnson, Jason, did you know him? Do you know his last name?
I do not.
Did you ever see him again after that date?
No.
Now, there come a point in time back at Miss Milton's residence that Mr. Wilson used, he couldn't find his cell phone, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so he used Miss Milton's phone with her permission.
no.
No what?
I don't remember that happening.
He used the phone, right?
Not that I saw.
And you were there for what, 2 hours?
At Christine's house?
Yes.
No.
How long were you at,
Christine's house?
yes?
When we returned in the Uber, I was only at Christine's house for maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. Oh, I'm
Not
sorry.
long.
It was 2 hours at Jason's house.
At Jason's house, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Wilson and Jason and Ms. Milton use cocaine or other drugs that evening?
Yes.
What drugs specifically?
I saw Christine, Jason, and Wilson using cocaine. Everybody was drinking and smoking marijuana as well.
Okay. Did you use cocaine?
I did not.
You may.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right.
Brief, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just want to ask you briefly about the cocaine use. How much cocaine did you see being used that night?
Very little. I would say maybe a couple of lines each.
And was that an amount we consider like a party amount?
Yeah, it was not a large amount.
So based on that cocaine use, was anybody out of control?
No.
So would you say that, again, people are buzz-friendly?
Yeah, intoxicated, but everybody was, having a good time and nothing concerning.
Thank you. I have nothing further. I'd ask that she be excused.
All right. Go ahead.
Ma'am, briefly,
Okay.
who supplied the cocaine?
I'm not sure.
And where was it used?
At
Smell?
Jason's house.
Jason's house.
Yes.
And obviously, once you left, you don't know if Ms. Milton and Mr. Wilson continued using
I do not.
or used anything else.
I do not.